March 28, 1974, Madison Square Garden. Millions of dollars were on the line, and the rematch with Joe Frazier was being broadcast live on ABC to the entire country. Muhammad Ali stepped into the ring to the deafening roar of 20,000 people. The cameras were locked on him, and the show's timing was calculated down to the second. But at the moment the announcer began the introduction, Ali suddenly froze. He ignored the referees and the cameras, staring at a single spot in the third row. A girl sat there in a worn-out man's leather jacket, weeping silently. Ali raised his hand, commanding the announcer and the stadium to go silent, completely breaking the script of the year's most anticipated television event. The atmosphere inside the arena shifted instantly from chaotic celebration to a heavy, confused stillness. Producers in the television trucks panicked as the carefully planned broadcast schedule began to unravel in real time. Ali did not care about the flashing bulbs of the photographers or the frantic signals from his corner. His entire focus remained fixed on the fragile figure in the audience, who seemed completely out of place amidst the high-stakes glitz of the heavyweight championship. The girl did not scream his name or wave a poster like the thousands around her. She simply sat trembling, her face wet with tears that had nothing to do with the excitement of the fight. Ali moved toward the edge of the ring, his boots silent on the canvas as he bypassed the officials who tried to direct him back to the center. The roar of the crowd died down into a murmur of disbelief. This was the most watched man on the planet, a performer who usually lived for the spotlight, yet he was now intentionally sabotaging his own grand entrance. He leaned over the ropes, narrowing the distance between the legend and the grieving stranger. By halting the machinery of the global sports industry, he forced 20,000 people and millions of viewers at home to look where he was looking. He stripped away the persona of the fighter and became a man who recognized a level of pain that could not be ignored for the sake of a boxing match. The silence he imposed was absolute, turning the world's most famous sporting cathedral into a private space for a single, profound human encounter. The bright lights of the ring continued to hum, but the spectacle had vanished, replaced by an unplanned moment of raw reality that no one in the arena had prepared for. Ali stood at the precipice of the ring, waiting, proving that for him, the life of one person in the crowd carried more weight than the title itself. Ali knelt at the edge of the ring, beckoned the girl closer, and demanded a microphone. The entire world waited for his signature trash talk, but the champion instead asked about the cause of her pain. Patricia confessed through her tears that she was there in place of her 16-year-old brother Marcus, who was dying of leukemia in a Harlem hospital. She wore his jacket, and in her hands, she clutched a cheap tape recorder so that her brother could at least hear the sounds of the fight. In that moment, Ali realized that while he fought for a belt, a young man just a few miles away was fighting a real battle for his life. Ali stood up, looked directly into the camera to address Marcus, and announced that tonight's fight belonged only to him. The announcement sent a shockwave through the arena, replacing the typical pre-match bravado with an overwhelming sense of purpose. Ali ignored the frantic signals from his trainers and the confused whispers of the ringside officials as he focused entirely on the lens of the television camera, speaking to a boy he had never met. He spoke with a gravity that silenced the skeptics and the critics who had come to see a sporting spectacle. To Ali, the millions of dollars in revenue and the prestigious heavyweight title suddenly felt secondary to the struggle of a teenager breathing through a ventilator in a sterile ward. He made it clear to the global audience that the true meaning of a champion was found in the strength to endure suffering, not just the ability to deliver a punch. The cameras captured every line of determination on Ali's face as he dedicated his performance to the invisible warrior in Harlem. He transformed the ring from a place of conflict into a platform of hope, forcing every viewer to acknowledge the fragility of life. Patricia watched from the third row, her hands still trembling around the recorder, as the man who was often called the greatest athlete in history chose to share his glory with her brother. The stadium, once filled with people divided by their bets and their loyalties, became unified under the weight of this shared human story. Ali felt the shift in the atmosphere, drawing a different kind of energy from the crowd. He was no longer just fighting Joe Frazier. He was fighting to give a dying boy a reason to keep holding on for one more day. The bells and buzzers of the technical crew faded into the background as Ali prepared for the opening round, carrying the burden of Marcus's hopes on his shoulders. He stepped back into the center of the ring, his eyes burning with a new fire, ready to transform the brutality of boxing into a tribute of grace and resilience. The bout began. Ali fought unlike his usual self. In every movement, in every signature dance and jab, a different kind of fury could be felt. He worked himself to exhaustion for all 12 rounds, knowing that behind every move he made, a boy to whom doctors had given only a few days was watching from a hospital bed. This was no longer a sport. It was a personal message. After the final gong and Ali's victory, instead of celebrating with the press, he found Patricia in the backstage area. He gave her his trainer's number and issued an ultimatum to his team: organize a meeting with Marcus at any cost, despite medical prohibitions. The intensity within the ring had reached a fever pitch as Ali pushed his body far beyond the limits of a standard tactical performance. He ignored the fatigue in his limbs and the heavy blows from Frazier, driven by a singular image of a flickering television screen in a dark hospital room. Every combination he threw was a testament to survival, a rhythmic display of defiance intended to show Marcus that even under the greatest pressure, one could still remain standing. The crowd sensed the shift in his aura, witnessing a champion who was no longer performing for the cameras or the historians, but for the soul of a single spectator. When the decision was announced and the referee raised his hand, Ali did not offer his usual boastful victory speech. He brushed past the reporters and the flashing lights, his face set in a mask of grim determination that confused those who expected the usual showmanship. Deep within the concrete corridors of the arena, away from the roaring fans, Ali stood before Patricia with the sweat still dripping from his brow. He spoke with a quiet urgency that brooked no argument from his management or his legal team. He made it clear that the victory in the ring was meaningless if it did not translate into a moment of real connection for the boy who had inspired it. His demands were absolute, sweeping aside concerns about liability, schedules, or the risks of bringing a critically ill patient into a training environment. He forced his inner circle to understand that their priorities had shifted in an instant. The machinery of his career was now being redirected toward a private act of grace. As he left the arena that night, the championship belt was merely an accessory. His real focus was already on the logistics of the meeting he had promised. He stayed awake for hours, personally overseeing the details and ensuring that every barrier was removed. Ali had won the fight in the garden, but he was now preparing for the most important encounter of his life, one that would take place without a crowd, without judges, and without any reward other than the dignity of a dying boy. He had committed himself to a path that transcended boxing, proving that a true champion's power was best used when the world was no longer watching. 4 days later, Ali brought Marcus to a closed boxing gym in the Bronx. There were no reporters, no flashes, only the champion and the fan. Ali himself moved the boy from the car into a wheelchair and spent several hours with him in the ring, showing him moves and sharing secrets. He made Marcus feel not like a patient, but like part of the champion's team. This day became the teenager's personal victory over his illness, a moment of absolute triumph that was more important than any diagnosis. The air inside the gym was thick with the scent of old leather and liniment, a world away from the sterile chemical smell of the hospital ward that had defined Marcus's life for months. Ali moved with a quiet, deliberate grace, stripping away the loud persona he showed the cameras to reveal a man of profound patience. He guided Marcus's thin hands, wrapping them in professional tape with the same care he used for his own, treating the boy as a fellow warrior preparing for a main event. They moved across the canvas in a slow, rhythmic imitation of the legendary Ali shuffle, the champion adjusting his pace to match the limitations of the wheelchair. Ali whispered technical details about weight distribution and the timing of a jab, speaking to Marcus as an equal in the craft of boxing. The silence of the gym was broken only by the muffled sounds of their movement and the occasional heavy bag swinging in the background. For those few hours, the looming shadow of the leukemia faded into insignificance, replaced by the electric reality of being inside the ropes with the most famous man on earth. Ali shared stories of his own struggles, his losses, and the mental strength required to get back up, giving Marcus a psychological armor that no medicine could provide. He showed the boy how to hold his chin and how to look an opponent in the eye with unwavering confidence. Patricia watched from the sidelines, seeing a light return to her brother's eyes that she feared had been extinguished forever. The champion refused to let the session end early, ignoring his own demanding schedule to ensure that Marcus felt every bit of the magic the ring had to offer. When it was finally time to leave, Marcus did not look like a victim of a terminal disease. He carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had gone rounds with the greatest and held his own. Ali stayed until the very end, making sure Marcus was comfortable and safe, leaving him with a sense of belonging that transcended the physical pain of his condition. This private encounter was a sanctuary where the boy was defined by his spirit rather than his symptoms, and Ali's presence served as the ultimate validation of Marcus's own inner strength. The bond formed in that empty gym was silent and unbreakable, a final gift of humanity that allowed a dying boy to depart this world not as a patient, but as a champion in his own right. 3 days after Marcus's funeral, Patricia received a letter from Ali. In it, the champion wrote that Marcus had shown him more courage than any boxer in the world. This meeting changed Patricia's life. She decided to become an oncology nurse to bring that same light to other children. Decades later, the video of that night at Madison Square Garden remains in the archives as an example of a moment when the world's greatest athlete chose compassion over glory, proving that his main weapon was not in his gloves, but in his heart. The handwritten words on the stationery carried a weight that stabilized Patricia's grieving soul, transforming her loss into a lifelong mission of service. She kept the letter as a sacred reminder that even the most fleeting human connections could redirect the course of a person's existence. As she walked through the halls of hospitals in the years that followed, she carried the memory of the Bronx gym and the quiet dignity Ali had shown her brother. She treated every young patient not as a victim of a biological tragedy, but as a fighter, deserving of the same respect Ali had afforded Marcus. The story of that night in 1974 became a legend whispered in the corridors of the medical community and among sports historians alike, serving as a rare instance where the high-pressure world of professional athletics paused for a pulse of pure empathy. Ali's decision to stop the broadcast and break the rigid protocols of the sporting industry set a precedent for what it meant to hold true power. It demonstrated that a platform as vast as his was most effective when used to amplify the humanity of the overlooked. For Patricia, the champion's legacy was not found in his record-breaking statistics or his iconic quotes, but in the 5 weeks of magic he provided to a boy who had nothing left but a dream. Even as the decades passed and the world changed, the essence of that encounter remained untouched by time. It stood as a testament to the fact that greatness is ultimately measured by the depth of one's impact on the lives of others. The graininess of the old ABC footage only added to its power, capturing a version of Ali that was more resilient and formidable than any version seen in a title fight. He had used his fame as a bridge rather than a pedestal, ensuring that Marcus did not face his final round alone. Patricia continued her work, guided by the spirit of that letter, proving that the light Ali ignited in a dark Bronx gym would continue to shine through her hands, touching countless lives long after the cheering of the crowds had faded into history.